All Hands on Hearts provides community-inspired, volunteer-powered disaster relief around the world. And you can see some of the top line statistics here from the work that we've been doing for the last 20 years. We have been able to impact 1.4 million people. We're really proud of that and looking forward to being able to continue that great work. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to do that without the power of 66,000 volunteers. A good number of people who have joined today were themselves part of that number, myself included. So it's great to see the community continue to come together in support of 179 disaster programs, soon to be 180 as we prepare our disaster assistance response teams to head to the Gulf to support with the incoming Hurricane Francine.
The resilience of communities impacted by disasters inspires us to fight for a better future. We are an organization driven by the strength of volunteers and people who want to make a difference in the world. By arriving early and staying late, we make a lasting impact. With your help, we can do more. Do you want to join us?
And with that, I will hand you over to Chloe.
Thank you, Jess. It's a bit hard to follow up that video. It kind of gets you, makes you want to get up and go do some work. Hi, everybody. So my name is Chloe Forman. I am the Director of Response. Similar to Jess, I got started as a volunteer in St. John in the Virgin Islands. That was after Irma and Maria. And like Jess and like a lot of the rest of us, I just sort of never left. I had the opportunity to work on several different programs. I moved into the response world and had the opportunity to work on lots of different responses. And now I lead our response efforts across domestic and international operations. So everything around new disasters, new assessments, and starting up those programs in the early phases prior to moving into any sort of long-term recovery. So yeah, I've been with the organization for 6 years. And I think similar to Jess, it has definitely changed my life. And I'm just quite excited to share some of that with you today and everything that we've been doing around response. So we're going to start a little bit just with a story. I think we all like to tell stories. So in Kentucky, just a couple of years ago, this was just after the international and the US operations teams joined forces. And you might remember these floods. They absolutely decimated Perry and Breathitt counties. Over 40 people died. And we as an organization responded quite quickly. We were there just as the waters were receding, ready to jump in and dive in to support those communities. We ended up running a program there for a couple of months, just working on mucking gut and cleaning out homes. This photo here, this is a couple, this is John and Jill. They were themselves affected by the floods. So we did end up doing a mucking gut on their home. But despite that, they were actually at the church that was hosting us every single day working, feeding us, making sure we were comfortable, giving us what we needed, running the donation center that the church was running. So really just giving everything of themselves to their community and to the other folks who were affected by the disasters. And it was quite a full circle moment. Just as we were wrapping up in Kentucky was when Hurricane Ian hit Florida, where we're still working today 2 years later. And John and Jill actually came out as volunteers to that program there in order to pay it forward, which was just a really kind of lovely full circle moment. And I think what we can do at All Hands and Hearts, a huge part of it is just building community, of course, with each other, but also with the folks that we work alongside. And that's kind of a beautiful part of what we get to do, especially in those early days. So today we're going to be talking mainly about rapid response. So we do work all over the world and we run long-term programs, but we're talking a bit more on what we can do in the US with, as Jess said, these smaller events, kind of quicker impact, and how we can get in and just do a bit of work quickly. So we aim to get our teams on the ground safely always, but also quickly to identify and meet different community needs. We have placed a bit of a focus on this US rapid response, because there are lots and lots of smaller events, and especially in underserved communities where we know that there's a gap that we can fill. As we can see, there's a lot more events happening globally, and a lot of communities are left behind, and we're often able to step in and sort of ease that burden in the early days. And you can see here, I've got a few words. So community focused, community is at the heart of what we're doing, and we always want to make sure that we're leading with a community focused mindset. We aim to be efficient. So again, safe, but we want to be quick, and we want to be there in the early days, impactful and flexible, which is really at the heart of what we're doing. So part of what we do in our world is monitor ongoing events. So through news and various different channels, and we'll leverage our really big network of folks that we've got across the US to understand when communities are overwhelmed by extreme weather events and where there's a space that we can step in. And if we think that there's a situation in which that local capacity might be a bit overwhelmed, and we can collaborate with those communities, we will mobilize a team to get on the ground. And that is typically experienced volunteers through our DART roster, so Disaster Assistance Response Team, and skilled staff as well to get boots on the ground and try and meet those needs. Of course, if there are needs that we can meet on a longer term scale, we'll try and launch a program, as we often do on a longer term. But this type of rapid response has actually allowed us to meet some of those shorter term needs in situations where there's an acute event, such as a tornado, that might have high impact, but for a shorter amount of time. We know that communities are resilient and communities will self-recover, but we can kind of reduce some of that burden in those early days and just get on the ground and try and meet some of those needs early on. We do this often between 24 and 72 hours. This is actually quite a timely webinar here as we're gearing up to respond to Hurricane Francine. As you might have seen, it made landfall in Louisiana as a Cat 2 hurricane. So hundreds of thousands without power, widespread flooding, and it's kind of affecting that entire region. So our wonderful US response manager, Michelle, has already got a team prepared. Assets are moving. And as soon as it's safe for us to be on the ground, we'll have a team there ready to support communities and in an area that we've worked previously. So we've put systems in place for just that, to be able to move people, work collaboratively with departments, and move our assets so that we can set up a safe and effective operation quite quickly. We've done this in response to floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, all sorts of extreme weather. We've even supported communities after fires, which much like Hawaii. So we're actually still working in Hawaii since the devastating fires just last year in Maui. I'm going to dive into some of our scopes now, but I just want to highlight the flexibility here. So we do lots and lots of different scopes, and we're sort of experts in certain areas, but we do aim to be absolutely as flexible as possible, especially when it comes to identifying gaps that the community identifies. Hawaii is a great example of that, where it wasn't actually appropriate for us to deploy early on, but we were able to support by remotely coordinating volunteers. And then once we did get on the ground, we've actually gotten into a lot of scopes that we wouldn't typically do around combating food insecurity, which has shown to be a great need after the fire. So I'll dive into some of our scopes now, but do just really want to highlight that flexibility is at the core of what we do. So to get into some of those scopes, the work is not always pretty. It's not always the most glamorous of work, but it is really needed. And you've got a list here of just some of the things that we're often doing in these responses. So muck and gut of homes and debris removal. This is the initial clean out of homes. So we call mucking and gutting, which is really the removal of materials that have gotten wet and damaged, and all that porous material that might harbor mold. So usually we're doing this after flooding or heavy rains, and we want to facilitate the home to dry out to then prevent future mold growth and allow for rebuild. We'll remove hazardous debris, often from properties or community spaces, and then mold sanitation as well. So we will often go back to homes that have been then dried out to conduct mold sanitation. Again, not a very glamorous job. It requires a lot of PPE. It's quite hot. It's quite uncomfortable, but it is incredibly necessary to prevent the harmful impacts of mold, which can have really compromising effects on health, and especially for folks who already have some sort of weakened immune system or health issues. A lot of folks won't do this. People get really eager to rebuild and go straight to that phase, and so it's really critical that we as an organization offer this service. We don't charge folks this, but go in to meet this critical step. And a lot of organizations won't do it as well. We've been really lucky in this space as well to provide a bit of community training around this. So we'll often try to provide a bit of education around the risks around mold. And in the past, we have been able to use our resources to do community training and distribute some of these supplies so folks can then support themselves in this scope moving forward. I've got here chainsaw work. So this is one of our more skilled scopes. So we'll use skilled sawyers to remove hazard trees, especially after high wind events. So typically we're looking to remove those that are threatening homes or creating dangerous conditions on someone's property. While this is sort of a higher skilled scope, we often use unskilled volunteers as well in what we call the swamping phase. So kind of moving all of the trees and such off the property after that's been cut down. And yeah, we've engaged in lots and lots of different scopes. So I've got on that list as well, data management and assisting at distribution centers. So it's kind of the beauty of this flexible model. Back in Tulsa, when we were working, the folks there were really overwhelmed with their caseload, and they asked us if we could call down their cases and kind of report back on that information to them. And that was something that our volunteers did. And then in Mississippi, the amount of donations that were being managed was quite overwhelming as well. And so we took on that scope and we helped manage the warehouse. We helped organize the donations. Again, just trying to meet whatever that need was that the community was seeking at that time. So we always want to understand if there's another need, and if there's a way for us to safely and appropriately meet it, that's something that we're going to try and flex to do. So we've got a few images here just to try and bring this to life. I know lots of you have probably been with us, but maybe some of you haven't. So just want to show you a bit what this actually looks like in practice. So the photo just before, if you go back, that was just one of our volunteers, Rob. He spent lots and lots of time on many different programs internationally and in the US working on a muck and gut. So this is the type of image you'll see frequently on our programs, just pulling out debris and construction materials from homes to start that process. And then the next photo here, so this will be a volunteer removing wet insulation out from under a mobile home. This is quite an incredible scope. Again, it's something that a lot of organizations won't do, and it's something that a lot of homeowners are unable to do for themselves. But it's a huge barrier because it really does prevent drying out of that home. If you've ever been on our programs with us, we have really keen volunteers who will get up, get in full PPE, caving helmets, Tyveks, dive under a muddy house and pull out insulation for hours, go back home to the base and wake up excited to do it again the next day. So again, really messy scope, really hard work, but it's something that it's a huge barrier, and it's incredible that we're able to meet that need with our work. We've got a photo of another one of our long-term volunteers, Carlos, and he is working his chainsaw for some down trees after what would have likely been a tornado in this case. You notice some other folks on the roof there in the background. I don't know exactly who that is in this case, but another really great thing about this work is that we're able to collaborate with homeowners and other organizations and find ways to complement the skill sets of all the folks who are on the ground working together in, whatever the recovery effort looks like. So yeah, that's a really beautiful thing about it as well. And like I said, we'll have skilled and unskilled folks on those chainsaw sites. And then this, just to come back to Kentucky, this was a photo that we also took during that response. And you can see our team of volunteers there working in the background, just pulling out debris and focused on getting those areas cleaned up. So this slide, we just want to bring attention to what our impact has looked like in the last couple of years. As Jess mentioned, we've really kind of dived into this. We've been diving into this rapid response a lot more in the last couple of years, trying to do more and do more in those smaller events. We do work around the world. The only continent that we haven't worked on is Antarctica. And so just in the last couple of years, we've been, in 11 countries, we've done 23 rapid responses, 9 long-term programs. You can see this here is just the focus of the work that we've done in the US in the last couple of years. You'll see quite a heavy focus in the Southeast, which is often where we're seeing a lot of these events in these communities, but we're not limited to that. We've got Hawaii, you can see California. We're very recently working in Vermont for a couple of weeks this summer. And that was after heavy flooding, just a year after they had had significant flooding that we responded to last year. So even though these responses are a bit shorter, we're still able to return to some of those same communities and show up and be there at a time when it's very needed. So again, these events are happening everywhere and they're happening more frequently, and we want to be able to be there to support folks. The last thing that I want to touch on here is that we want to be able to do more of this work, and we're always looking to improve. So this photo was actually taken just a few weeks ago at a training. So we conducted a rapid response training just for our internal staff to be able to build the skill set of our team and have more folks who are able to jump in and do this work, and really make a more sustainable model for us to be able to do this. So we completed this to really build our internal capacity. And you've got here DART volunteers as well. So like I said, we work with our roster, and we're always calling on people to be able to come out to events. We're using our roster right now to get folks to head out to Louisiana. And we're always looking at ways to engage with them, whether that's in disaster time or in blue sky time as well, to just keep them interested, engaged, and ready to respond and join us. And then process improvement. We go through every response. We do after action reviews. We look at what we could do better in order to be able to improve our process, and that's a big focus on us, and why we've been able to do more and more of this. So done a lot, but we're looking to do more, and unfortunately these events aren't going to stop. So the more that we're able to build our capacity, the more we'll be able to do that. So with that, I think I'll just pass you back to Jess to just speak on some of the wonderful partners who have helped us do this work.
Yeah, we wanted to just pause here and highlight some of the partners that have really stepped up and supported with the rapid response side of things. Obviously, we have lots and lots of partners, and we're very thankful for all of them. Not time here to cover everything, but did want to touch on a few. So obviously Amazon, in terms of product that can support communities in addition to LASCO, Airlink being so generous, helping our folks to get from where they are to these sites to help the people affected. Same with Southwest. Then we have Lockheed Martin, who's graciously joining us today to talk about their specific partner with us, National VOAD, that we plug into very, very closely there. And then Clean Water Foundation and Triva, who've also been really instrumental in supporting this rapid response concept, which typically involves upfront funding. So funding for disasters before we know where they are. These are so fast, the team is able to deploy so quickly, and the emerging needs are so critical that we need to gain the funding in advance. So this represents a huge amount of trust from these organizations and companies in the work that we have done over the years, and we're really grateful to them for being able to build and develop this model to support 23 countries, really doubling our response impact over the last couple of years. So huge thank you there. And now we'll move on to Rachel Leisure from Lockheed Martin.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jess, and hello, everyone. Well, first of all, I just want to thank All Hands and Hearts for the opportunity to speak with you all today. Lockheed Martin is very grateful for this partnership, and I'm excited to share about our perspective on rapid response. So I'll start with a quick intro and then dive right in. I'm Rachel Leisure, and I've been working at Lockheed Martin for about 5 years. I started as an intern in college and just loved the team and the work we do so much that I've stuck around. I'm one of 4 members on our space social impact team, and we work on volunteering, grant giving, and employee engagement with communities across the US by working with nonprofits like All Hands and Hearts. For some context, Lockheed Martin is divided into 4 different business areas. So that's space, which we're a part of, rotary and mission systems, missiles and fire control, and aeronautics. And each of these business areas has their own social impact team that functions mostly separately, but we are all unified under the same strategy and focus on the same community investment areas, which we like to call pillars. So our 3 pillars are future STEM workforce, those who serve, and community resilience, which has that focus on disaster response, food insecurity, and sustainability. Now, while our pillars on STEM education and military veteran communities have been a focus for a long time, community resilience has been a newer add in the past few years for us. And our team has worked hard to more clearly define it. And one of the ways we did that was realizing the great need for disaster relief within our communities and starting to increase our support to that area, which included a new partnership with All Hands and Hearts in 2021. And we've been thrilled with this partnership ever since. Now, Lockheed Martin has sites all across the US, including Louisiana, California, and Florida, so places where many disasters tend to occur. So we are always really impressed with All Hands and Hearts reach that extends across the globe and into many of the communities where our employees live, work, and thrive. I am constantly blown away by our employees' eagerness to jump in and support those communities when there is a disaster. And through that, it's become super clear to us that immediate response is important to them. And programs like Rapid Response allows for just that. The flexibility and efficiency of the Rapid Response program really makes a lasting impact, and our employees are grateful to see that our communities are being supported right away after a disaster. We also appreciate that All Hands and Hearts encourages our employees to get involved and volunteer, because while we understand the importance of grants, we also always want there to be more to our outreach. And these incredible volunteer opportunities really allow for a deeper partnership between our team, our employees, and All Hands and Hearts. So yeah, with that, I'll wrap up by saying our team is just super proud to support this program that is so organized and meaningful. And we really look forward to seeing the Rapid Response program continue to help communities across the globe. So thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
My name is Christine Baer, and I'm a grants manager for All Hands and Hearts. Fortunately, we have time for questions here because we have a lot of good ones. And this one I'm going to send to Jess. Can you tell us a little bit about how All Hands and Hearts thinks about climate change and its responses to climate disasters around the world?
Yeah, I think we are obviously focused on our mission of providing volunteer-powered, community-inspired disaster relief. We recognize that the climate crisis is increasing the frequency and severity of disasters, which are impacting communities around the world. And so, our model is about human connection, which requires traveling to places to stand alongside those communities, to boost their impact and to speed up their recovery. But obviously, we can also take a look at the way that we do that, the things that we do, the partners that we work with to make sure that we are taking steps to develop more sustainable practices. One example is the environmentally conscious techniques that we're using on our school build programs. So two different things at the moment. We are working with bamboo in the Philippines, which is a locally produced sustainable material. And it's also much lighter than wood or steel, which means that you can use less concrete. We're estimating about 60% less carbon footprint from this bamboo frame technology in the Philippines. And then we've also used compressed earth bricks on some of our other school builds. So, we will continue to support communities affected by the disasters that are happening, sadly, more often around the world, and we'll take steps to address the processes that we use to make sure that we are contributing to the solutions as well.
Thank you, Jess. Here's a very good question. This one I'm going to send to Chloe. We hear a lot or see the acronym DART or DART team. Can you explain to us how important the DART team is, what the DART team is and how important they are?
Yes, I will. I don't know if Mike is on this call, but he's probably thinking T stands for team. So DART stands for Disaster Assistance Response Team. And so that is the first group of individuals that's on the ground after an event. As I mentioned earlier, we use primarily volunteers. We're typically using experienced volunteers who either we know through All Hands and Hearts programs and who we've worked with on various projects in the past. They might have a certain skill that's needed for that particular response. So we actually have a whole roster of folks that we engage fairly regularly, and we get updates on their availability, their interests, their background, their skills. And then we engage them when an event happens. So we'll reach out and say, who's available? These are the skills that we're looking for. And depending what the event is and where it is, we might have different needs depending on skill set, language, etc. So DART is a really intense, fast-paced environment. It's constantly changing. You're the first folks connecting on the ground, so it's a really unique opportunity to get on the ground with the community who's just experienced a disaster. But it's also the earliest opportunity to be able to have an impact. So you are connecting with different stakeholders. You're often getting the work going. You're conducting assessments. You're communicating. So it is an incredibly important part of our early stages. And we're really lucky to have such a great engaged group of individuals, as well as the permanent response staff who often lead those teams.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for a couple more questions. So the first one from an audience member, currently the website shows the Maui Hawaii program ending in December. There seems to be so much work needed there. How and who makes the decision when to end a program?
Yeah, I think we have 4 factors that go into our programs. One, we're responding where community capacity is overwhelmed. And we continue to see outstanding and emerging needs in Hawaii. We also need volunteer interest for an organization that is volunteer powered, and an ability to have staff to support those volunteers. And then finally, funding. So sadly, this was something we saw in the rapid response space. Our rapid response program was designed to address a funding gap where when you wait for a disaster to happen and then you go out to ask people to fund it, these smaller, lesser known disasters in underserved communities, there isn't time to raise money to be able to provide that critical support in the first days and weeks. And so we flipped it around. We went to our trusted partners and asked them to provide funding up front and assured them that we would respond back on all the amazing things that we were able to do with that funding. And as you've seen, we've had great success. So in Hawaii, it's a combination of trying to access those funds from all of the different sources. So we believe that there is funding out there. There's certainly a need, and we have to join those 2 things together. I can give you a sneak peek that we have managed to secure a certain amount of additional funding that will allow us to extend the program into the new year. But I firmly believe there'll be more needs even beyond that. So the development team is working really hard to join the gaps there and find funding for us to continue working for much longer.
Thank you, Jess. We're so honored to be in Hawaii and to work alongside the community there. This is the last question. I'm going to send this one to Chloe. How All Hands and Hearts decides which events to respond to?
Yeah, sure. And so this one actually, it's quite similar when we talk about the decision to respond to a lot of the factors that just touched upon for the decision to extend. So we have a number of pillars that we look at, and first and foremost is need. So is there need, and is there need that we think we can reasonably meet in the community? That's the absolute number one thing that we're looking at. We have to look at our internal capacity. So do we have the team? Do we have the staff? Do we have access to volunteers? Do we have DART members? Do we have the ability to get people on the ground to do the work? Of course, funding goes into that decision. As Jess said, we have a bunch of pre-positioned funding now that we can use upfront, but sometimes we'll have more funding or donors initially who will provide support for a specific location. Health, safety, and security. We do work in disaster zones, so that is something that we're considering very significantly at the start of any event, and we'll wait until it is safe and appropriate to go into a specific affected area. But we will look at that. We work with unskilled and untrained, well, unskilled but trained volunteers. So we just need to make sure that the safety and security situation is something that we can manage. And so essentially looking at a combination of these factors, we'll make a decision within the team if we're able to go to a location. it is an art and not a science. We do have a lot of different places that we've worked in the past, which will often help facilitate us to return to that location. We'll often have specific contacts on the ground reach out directly to us and say, hey, you supported us through this time, would you be able to mobilize a team? We do take those community connections very seriously as well. So we look at all these different factors and essentially try and figure out when they come together to deploy a team.
That's beautiful. Okay, Jess, I'll turn the mic over to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It was great to see so many of you here to hear us talk a little bit more about this rapid response strategy and helping with these smaller disasters. I think as a disaster relief organization, obviously we're going to continue to support where there are major impacts, but this was an important way for us to expand our impact and support more people. And we would love to see all of you out there on a program soon, whether that is in Louisiana for Hurricane Francine or to one of our other programs in Hawaii, Mexico, or elsewhere around the world. So thank you for all of the support that you have provided, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.